excuse me, no. And she took her paper. and I remember I felt so convicted. I said, what is wrong with me? Why I stood there silent. And she had to stand up for herself. I said, no, sir, not again. Not again. No. So, we have the ability, one, to teach our children, two, to reclaim that I have power, right? Like, why should I believe that something is not for me? Why should I believe something is not for me? And we have a lot of times we're willing to see that for our children, but we choose less for ourselves. So that's one thing I think about Black maternal health. And I think when I stepped into my power as a mother, as my child's first teacher, how she sees herself is what comes out of my mouth. So I'm going to tell her, you're strong. I'm going to tell her, you're able. We're going to, if I don't know how to do it, we're going to figure it out together. And there's a way that we can move and shift things. Also, what our expectations are. And so, yes, I don't recruit teachers, right? But when I'm putting my child in the school, you better believe I'm active. I'm there. I want to hear, what are you doing? I want to know what's in the program. And when she tells me something, I'm going to call to you.
You're involved. You're involved. I mean, and that's very important. So you are a new mom, so you're not dealing with school yet. So pretty soon, I mean, you're thinking about pre-K pretty soon, and even then it starts, because I mean, it's important. Like where you send your child matters. So
Gosh, I want to think about it. I mean, as you were talking, I was literally thinking about a lot of the experiences I've had over, like, I think during my pregnancy and recently giving birth. And I feel like this may not really answer your question, but
It's
what
okay.
you're just saying made me think about how, like, your child was able to approach that person probably because they don't have that. They're not having to deal with their perception of how the world sees them if they speak up. I feel like as a new mom, I'm still trying to get my confidence in terms of like standing up for myself as a mom or speaking up for my child. Like even if there's certain things that I'm like, oh, okay. Like for example, like, I've been before having a baby, obviously I've never been to a pediatrician like as the parent. But there'll be a couple of things that would happen. I'm like, I don't really want them to do that. But I don't say anything because I'm like, oh gosh, they're probably gonna be like, because I think probably because I'm Black, I feel like if I was a white woman, I probably wouldn't think about that. But I'm like, I don't want to.
Your inner white
I don't. I'm trying, and because an incident happened, and later on I thought about it, and I kind of felt like I betrayed myself because I'm like, I should have like said no. I don't want you to do that on her. But I felt like if I said no, they'll probably see me as like, oh, she's being difficult, or like maybe I don't want to be perceived negatively. So I just gave it. But after that, I'm like, oh God, like I'm like, you need to like speak up because I'm like, this is my child. What are they gonna do? Like, what are they gonna do if I say no? I don't want you to do that. Whatever you're trying to do on my child. I'm like, nothing. But I think I was so caught up in like how I was going to be perceived by the white nurse that I just didn't see anything. And I had a similar experience even giving birth at the hospital. Overall, my experience was amazing. But just certain things, they're like, oh, procedures like they wanted to do that I didn't want it. But I didn't want to say no because they're all so nice. And like, I don't want to come off like a certain way. But I'm like, I need to channel my inner white woman. I need to like not care. And one of my friends always tells me this is like, when you become a mom, you start to like, you don't care anymore what people think about you. I'm like, I'm not there yet, but I'm hoping to be. But yeah.
I feel like everything, we can take different approaches, right? Sometimes it might be that, direct approach, but it's like what's comfortable for you and what works for you. And sometimes it might be, I can't say it, I'm like channeling your inner white woman. Oh, help me understand what's going on here, or just so I know, whatever. But some way that you know that you are satisfied because you deserve to have your questions answered, to be comfortable with whatever's going on. That body autonomy. This is you have one house.
Yeah.
And so it's so difficult, and I struggle with it for sure. And there's times when I say to myself, and sometimes I have to do my Issa Rae moments, hype myself up. And because it's just like, it's not me, then who?
Exactly.
But I think we all bear that emotional burden as Black people navigating health spaces. And that's part of that, the crux of bias, right? And implicit bias and discrimination, because we're not listened to, right? We're not seen for our humanity. And that's there's not careful listening. There's not, we feel almost disempowered to even ask a question. And why is it when I am in medical spaces advocating for my children, my older daughter has a chronic medical condition where we were in the hospital all the time as an infant and as a toddler. But why did I have to throw my degrees around just for them to pay attention to me and listen to my questions and take me seriously? And so that's a problem. It's a fundamental problem why we as Black birthing individuals are dying and have adverse health issues, because we're not listened to, we're not regarded, and even when we speak up, we're we're discredited, right? And so that's at the crux of it's not about following the statistics on C-section rate and blood loss. It's about what's the relational aspect of how do you feel when you're in those spaces? Were you valued? Were you respected? Were you listened to? Right? Did they see you for who you are in your humanity? Right? And that's the othering of our bodies that happens in these medical spaces that is harming us and killing us.
No, it is absolutely. And if you have any guilt about not addressing it, just let it go. It is what it is. You can't go back and change it. But own your power. You deserve to speak up for yourself. And that little baby, like until she becomes 18 months old, so you are her advocate. And you know what? Folks are going to think what they're going to think.
Yeah.
This is my belief. And so I'm going to get what's right for me, because I'm the only one who knows what's right for me. I'm going to trust the doctor's expert opinion. But if I go in with something and say, this is something that is happening to me and you're trying to dismiss it, I'm going to ask for another opinion, because listen, insurance is very expensive. And I pay a lot of money for you to tell me that like I'm being hysterical. So I've had the title of being difficult. I've had the of being too much. I'm okay with that, like, because it's like your opinion of me. Like I'd rather be called difficult and alive,
Right. Yeah.
than be like, oh, she's so sweet and dead.
Yeah. And I think that's where I'm working actively to get there. But it's hard because it's a shift to like my general persona. But it's also like, because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh gosh, must appear like nice. I don't want to be rude. I'm like, especially like if they've been nice to you, like you're just like, I have to be nice back. And like I feel like the moment I say something that is not agreeable, then their perception of me is going to change. So I have to. But you're so right, because I want my daughter to grow up and be confident and challenge things and push back. And I feel like even now, like again, just 3 months, like even taking my daughter to the pediatrician, there's certain things that you don't want to challenge, like expert opinion, because they're doctors and they went to medical school. And so I'm like, I don't know. My daughter was born with a tongue tie, and like when she initially was born, I noticed it and I thought, but they're like, oh no, it's fine. It wasn't going to be a problem. I even had a conversation with a pediatrician, and pediatrician was like, yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. It's fine. It doesn't need intervention. And I'm like, okay, even though I maybe thought, but I sort of ignored it. Guess what? Turned out it wasn't until a lactation consultant called it out. It's affected my breastfeeding. Like, that's a whole nother story. But I'm like, I wish that I'd like pushed back. But again, I'm like, what do I know? Like, I didn't know much about like babies born with tongue tie. Like, if you're an expert and you're telling me that it's not a problem, even if I'm seeing signs, I'm gonna think it's not a problem because you're like, I expect you to know more than I do, but sometimes they're wrong. So I think it's part of going back to like I don't like to do shoulda, coulda, woulda, but sometimes I do that. I'm like, oh, I should have like pushed back. I should have like, but again, like,
you can't get on the phone. But you are right. I'm glad that somebody else pointed it out, and that it was fixed before it becomes an even worse issue. But you are dismissed sometimes. Unfortunately, I've had that. I don't think in my years I've had. Y'all know my age. I've had a Black doctor, and I have not. So I've had to advocate for myself, and I think a lot of times when I'm saying something to them about my own body, they're telling me like, "Oh no," and I'm like, because I have had migraines since I was 16 years old, and I remember going to the doctor and telling like these migraines, because like they just were not normal, like they were not headaches, and she said, "It's your braids."
Wow.
It's like your braids are too tight.
Like react appropriately. Like now she told me, I'm like, girl. But like how I reacted at the time, it's like, no, like it's not my braids. And they kept telling me it wasn't, it was very long time after that I finally was diagnosed with migraines. And I kept telling them, they kept telling me that it was my hairstyles that was giving me, a headache and it's a migraine. And I wear braids, waves, wigs, like whatever it is. So it's just like me telling you something and you're saying, no, it's your braids, honey. That's why you have a headache. Things like that. Like just if it was like a black woman doctor, she would have not said it was my braid because chances are she probably had braids. She's had braids at some point or something like that. So representation is so important.
Absolutely.
I believe, and I think that's why it's so exciting that you are, going to medical school soon. So what was that journey like for you? Yeah.
So I want to circle back because we were talking about schools earlier
Yeah.
and having teachers, but you also have to consider the resources that the schools have. Because I went to a Title I school. I went to Title I schools, and I went to a high school that was predominantly white teachers, and it was the superintendent's high school. And then in the middle of my high school career, I went to a school that was predominantly black, and it was under resourced areas, and I could see the difference. Like one high school, I got laptop, we got MacBooks that we took home. Yes, and had classes on, and we had a gym in the school lunch. Like we had access to our teachers. It was a small class size. Where in my other school that I went to, it was it was a higher student to teacher ratio. The books looked horrible, if there even were books, and the teachers just didn't have the bandwidth to want to, do their best or to even engage in the teaching because everyone is probably distracted, doing something else. So the resources that schools have is also an important factor to the um, the quality of the education that you receive. And sometimes I don't think people think about that because you have to keep kids engaged. Like they be on TikTok every day. They have other attention span, shorter attention span. So like you have to make a classroom environment welcoming and engaging for someone to learn. So uh, I'm first generation college, first generation high school graduate, college graduate, master's degree, and now I'll be a first generation physician. So
Amen now. That's amazing. That's amazing.
so it's been a rough ride. I didn't really have people in my family who are physicians to like look up to or to ask how do I do this, but I was gracious enough to gain mentors along the way,
Yeah.
to be able to help me with that and just guide me in the right direction. But it was definitely hard.
And I can't imagine being the first to do something. It's while it was like applauding you and like saying, you're a trailblazer, like it's really hard to be the first. And as you said, not having someone to go to, like somebody close to you where you can refer back and says like, hey, I'm struggling here, I'm struggling there. Like, what do I do? I helped my daughter fill out, FAFSA the other day. And, I'd had a conversation with somebody who just like, there's a lot of parents who do not know how to fill that out, and they just get frustrated and kids get left behind because of lack of bandwidth, I would say, on our parents' side. Like they just didn't understand. Like my parents were very smart, but they were not college educated. So when I went back to school, it was just like, yeah, they were proud of me, but if I wanted help, I mean, I was on my own. So I get how tough that is, and that's why it truly is so impressive that you were able to find mentors and necessarily go into another school that again lack of resources. I've been to school recently that has no library, and like that blew my mind because I'm like every school, but there's no library. I mean, they blew my mind. Like, how do you not have a library at a school? Like, what do you read? Things like that. So no, really kudos to that. And I think, you're a doula and, you guys are both in that field, like with Black Maternal Health. And April 11th through the 17th is dedicated as Black Maternal Health Week. So you guys have quite a bit planned. So let's dive in a little bit. Not that we're, overshadowing the issues. I know that you guys are behind the scenes working on addressing these systemic and structural racism that, exists, and, also advocating and mentoring and telling folks, like, we do have to be our child's like teacher. It's just like, I think if I lived in Florida right now, thank God I don't. Schooled because I mean, any place that tells my child that slavery was good for them is just a place they will no longer be visited. So even though we're not there in Florida, I think we still have a responsibility as parents to teach our kids our history, not to become victims, but for them to advocate, for them to be proud, and for them to go fight that much harder to make sure that their dreams don't get overshadowed and stamped on. All right, cool. So we're not overlooking it at all. So I know y'all are working behind the scenes, and tap me in, girl. Tap me in, y'all got me, sis. I got that. I'll do what I can. But just really want to talk about Black Maternal Health Week and what that means, and how Worcester can get involved, and how the community can get involved, and what does that mean? So let's talk about it.
I guess I'll start us off. So the reason why we're even having a dedicated week in this country is because of the statistics. So we've all seen it. It's mind-numbing, it's something that unfortunately has had unintended harm on Black birthing communities. But the statistics are real. We truly have a public health crisis in this country because Black birthing individuals are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from preventable pregnancy complications. And this is not just something, that this is not a small thing. Because when you look at all industrialized nations in this country, we unfortunately and sadly lead the pack in having the worst birth outcomes than, small, developing countries. And why is that? And when you peel back the layers of the onion, it's again because we have not wrestled with the elephant in the room, which is systemic racism that impacts everything. It's the air that we breathe. It's built into the walls. It's the structures and systems in place that have historic legacies of how we got here. And so what you talked about, the erasure of history, right, is to our fault and detriment. And that just doesn't just harm the Black community, it harms all of us. And when you think about Black birthing individuals, we are dying because we're not being, listened to and being offered, and we don't have trust because of the historical distress in this country. And so, we think being in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that this is a bastion of, progressive thought and action. But sadly, I've been alarmed at the statistics that march right along the rest of the country. In fact, when you look at the latest data, we're bringing up the rear in terms of having the worst outcomes from childbirth hospitalizations in this country. And so it's a sobering reckoning that we're immersed in, and which is why the Black Mamas Alliance coined Black Maternal Health Week as a week of national recognition to what is happening. It's from April 11th to April 17th every single year. And it really seeks to bring attention and coalesce what's happening across our country to bring awareness and education, but also policy related action to how can we, as communities, as academic institutions, as doulas, as partners, to lean in to support Black birthing people and women to address this, not only the systemic structures and of which racism is one, but also how can we wrap our birthing moms and people in a cocoon of support to ensure that they have the best opportunity to have a positive birth experience and a healthy child. And I think there's some unintended harms that we are seeing because of the national attention that, I now have patients that are coming as soon as they're pregnant, they're coming seeking me because they're saying, I don't want to die. Like that should not be how we should be orienting Black birth. And that should not be a win, saying at least you didn't die, which happens. And that is how we are being spoken about, as though at least you didn't die. I'm like, is that our goal?
That's
So I think we've kind of, yes, we need to raise the alarm, right? But at the same time, we're perpetuating harms because now so many Black women and birthing people who are pregnant now have so much fear and anxiety of, now that they're pregnant, doom and gloom, what's going to happen to me and what are my outcomes? So I feel as though we need to look at this holistically, and it's not about socioeconomic status, or education, because the wealthiest Black people are still dying. It has nothing to do with education or income or socioeconomic status. It has everything to do with racism, right? It's not race, it's racism. And that's what we need to be grappling with to change fundamentally and really shift the direction of this trajectory.
Absolutely. We still deserve joy. Like when we're pregnant, pregnancy is such a joyful time, I think. And if your entire pregnancy is taken up with fear, like I don't want to die, you lose the joy of it.
Yep.
You lose the joy. So I'm gonna go to you, and then I'm gonna go back to you, and because we want to talk about your most recent, you're the most recent mom of all of us, so we're gonna chat with that, like, and for you about Black Maternal Health Week.
Yeah, so it's interesting because Dr. Johnson Mbako, since she got here for the last couple of months, was talking, saying, "Hey, look, what are we doing? How are we going to be observing or celebrating or promoting, Black Maternal Health Week at UMass?" And when we talked a few months ago, she had already kind of jostled many departments, and so if you think about in a medical system, in a medical school, well, what do? You have grand rounds, like you talk, you learn, right? And so it makes sense that you would kind of, that would be what you can do. I think sometimes when we're talking about big problems, we're trying to tackle big issues, you'll have a person over here in medicine talking about how they want to change, the food system. I'm like, that's great, but like, are you a farmer? Like, what's your real ability to change this, And so I think it's so important to start within your sphere of influence. And so at the medical school, departments that are involved in Black maternal health, internal medicine, right? They're the general internal medicine, they're the doctors who take care of everybody, adult medicine people, pediatrics, right? Obviously OBGYN, family medicine, all of these groups, all of these departments are involved with what we're doing to improve or to talk about Black maternal health. Psychiatry as well. And so, nursing. So there's a lot of the departments have mobilized their resources to either offer a grand rounds or participate in some of what we have planned. And then it's been pretty wild actually. Like, there's a lot planned. So kicking off on tomorrow with the kickoff Distinguished Health Equity Lecture. And so we're so excited to have a really dynamic speaker, Dr. Ndidi Amuta Anakaga from Tufts, who will be coming to us live and in person at the medical school. And so it's very exciting. And then just, I always say, we can have nice things. Like one of the things that I loved about medical school was, they'd have these fancy, lectures and talks, and, you see all these, old people with their sports coats and old ladies with, like pantyhose and flat shoes. And they always had wine and good food. And I was like, so that's one of the things. Like you go to medical school and you listen to people talk. Like, I mean, you hear lecturers and people who are like high standing, you look it up and you're like, oh my gosh, like you meet people who are paving the way. And so that's the level. It's like, okay, Black Maternal Health Week, we can have nice things. We can have things in the medical school that are at that level of we've invited someone who is sought after and it took a lot to get them there and all of that. And really to have these that same level. I think a lot of times when something is focused on Black people, it's all taking all the shorts possible.
All together.
I'm not about that life. I love to spend money. I love it. There's few things I love more.
No, we're not throwing nothing together. Doing it nice.
Exactly. You know, I want it nice, and so it's been wonderful. So Dr. Johnson Abaku got it started, getting all the departments all activated, and then I came in and I was like, oh, let's do this. Like, are we coming caviar? No, we didn't go crazy, but I think again, like that point of saying we can have nice things, have a nice lecture where there is a lot of energy and focus, and so the school and the hospital have both been really excited to take that next step. You know, it's nice to say, okay, we understand this, we think it's very important, and yes, racism. Oh, we gotta get rid of racism. Okay, now let's talk about racism in your context. Let's talk about racism in your context. So we're talking about pediatrics and we're talking about breastfeeding and like understanding how did we get here and what is our role in course correcting. And so that's really exciting. All of those grand rounds throughout the week, and then the
Piece of resistance.
yes, I was pregnant. Yes, that had to be from pregnancy. Like I can't find my words. Yes. But so we are having a community baby shower. So in partnership in collaboration with Glow Mom, lots of places, especially I think after the pandemic, have started to do this community baby showers. And so it's really exciting because I think the whole medical school and hospital community, you know, people buying stuff off the Amazon wish list. You know, we just got a notification of like, you know, a bunch of cribettes that are going to be there. We have a onesie decorating station. So just really, again, like having a baby shower and saying, you know, not everyone has that. You know, you think about, did you have a baby shower?
I did.
Okay. When I just went to a baby shower a couple weeks ago, you know, and some people 2 and 3 baby showers. Well, what about the people who don't have somebody to throw them a shower? The people who are coming to the hospital and they don't have the stuff that they need. You can't be discharged home from the hospital without a car seat. And so what kind of stress is that when you have this long list of all of these things that you don't have? And so for people who are currently pregnant, like Black people, we want this is Black Maternal Health Week, so we know who our target audience is. And so being able to come to the community baby shower and let us shower you with the things that you need and resources that are available, really kind of highlighting. I think if you think about like a mixture between a baby shower and like one of those just between friends sales where you go and it's like, okay, I'm like just I think it's just going to be a wonderful Saturday afternoon of love and support, and the maternity center staff is like so excited.
Oh, that's amazing.
So excited.
Yeah.
Like game, swaddle the baby the fastest. Like so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And then the Department of Public Health on Tuesday will have this like the State of Black Maternal Health in Worcester at City Hall. So it's like this is a big deal. This is a big deal.
It is a big deal. Yeah. It's important.
Dr. Hamlin, you're gonna close us out.
Yes. I'll be talking at 7:00 in the morning about yes. I will be on Zoom. So I'm giving grand rounds for the OB department and really some of what I've talked about today, where like Black women are not broken. Like there's nothing wrong with us. What's wrong is what's happening to us, around us, and what's being done to us because of racism. Like we're not broken. There's nothing wrong with us. Okay. So yes, exactly. And so the talk is really about a workforce, talking about workforce solutions to the Black maternal health crisis. So when we think similar to what we saw in medicine with the Flexner report, midwifery was Black, period. Like midwife and Black women, we delivered all the babies.
We did.
Google all my babies, YouTube, 17 minutes. And you will see, even in days early Jim Crow, just after slavery is birth was attended by Black women.
It was.
And over time, we see this drastic professionalization of midwifery. And we said, okay, you need to have a license to practice. And in order to have a license, you have to be, so things like literacy. So just say you have to pass this test, or we see these are structures. It's not to say that having standards is bad, but we have to understand what the standards are based on. So if you would take somebody who has an experience of delivering 200 babies and say, no, actually, this old white man is more expert because he's old and white.
Yeah.
So then we go to the field of midwifery today, where so many people could be treated and cared for by a midwife. And we have not a large percentage of people who are being cared for by midwives, and midwifery is so white.
It is.
Again.
And it didn't start out that way.
These are things,
but now it's white.
And it wasn't by accident. This is things that are done deliberately, as with racism as the root. Same nursing, same thing. This history repeats itself over and over again because the original sin, like our whole country, it's rooted in racism.
It is.
As is medicine. Like where was the actual financial driver for medicine? Like who were the customers of physicians on plantations? Guess what? The owners of people. And so the driver of medicine was slavery. And so if I didn't learn this, and when you realize that, then you're like, okay, how can we deconstruct this, or how can we actually go the other direction? But if we don't know that that's even happening, we get to tell young people like Anaya, oh, well, if you just work hard enough, then maybe you'll get there one day. And what happens over time is it seeps into your psyche to think that, well, let me not say too much. Let me just be thankful for being here. I don't want them to think this of me. You know how exhausting it is to have that back and forth in your mind?
Just to be grateful to be included.
And then we think that it's something with us. Again, Black women are not broken. The system is doing what it was designed to do. So let's kind of deconstruct some of these things. And then again, because who's responsible for producing the nursing workforce, the midwifery workforce? The schools that produce those people. So I want to take a different approach. And that's what my grand rounds will be about.
No, I think that's incredible because you're right. We are not broken. And it goes back to the way we speak to ourselves, the way we speak to each other, and the way that we speak to our children. We have to feed them with positive things to let them know, like, yeah, the system might be against you, and just working hard alone is not gonna, get you through it, but you're not broken. You're 100% not broken. So feed into yourself like great things. Every single room that I walk into, I believe that I deserve to be in there, whether I know what they're talking about or not. You know, because I'm like, how dare you tell me that I don't belong? And if it's not a room that I don't belong in, I will determine that for myself. And I think like, we've got to take back our power, and just in terms, and it's not being in a disrespectful way. It's just saying, why should I be excluded? Like, what is it? Because if we're all created equal, right? That means that everything that is for you is for me. And oftentimes that's not the way it is. So like, I don't, I'm working on that part. No, I'm not. Don't believe that anything that wasn't like, if it's something I don't want, it's because I don't want it. It's not because I should be excluded from it. So that's just the mentality that I'm trying to raise my daughters to believe. Like, she wants to be a pediatrician. She's been wanting that for a long time because she likes kids. And so, I'm pushing. So we'll see where that goes. So Miss Sinai, Black Maternal Health Week for you.
What we're doing?
Yeah, well, you're doing your role and all.
My role in the
Yes.
the behind the scenes work, planning everything, coordinating, like making sure that we're in communication with the different departments, and that like, organizing volunteers, getting people to sign up to help out with registration and welcoming people into the events. The whole, yes, all of it.
she was the main driver behind this. She reached out, connected, and and I met you at an event, and to set this all up. And I'm like, let's do it different than I normally do it, because my studio's not big enough to hold everybody, and I was just so excited to talk to you guys, and just to really, because I think sometimes we don't act because we don't have information, and because information is not like delivered the same way to everyone, and depending on where you are, sometimes you miss things. So I want to make sure that the community knows about this, that they know that this is a space that is safe, that is created for them by people that look like them, because representation does matter.
Yeah.
100%.
And it does. And one of the things that being adamant about reaching out to community organizations and letting them know what's going on during Black Maternal Health Week, and what they can be involved in, or just being involved in anything wherever their schedule permits, was very important. And we'll also be promoting our doula program that we're going to be starting. So just getting people to sign up to receive information about our doula program that we're going to have. And UMass, that is catered towards Black birthing persons in Worcester. Whether you speak English, Spanish, Haitian Creole, Twi, Brazilian Portuguese, just getting connected with those people, the doulas.
That's incredible. I do know that there is a need for doulas. I do see. I know what doula. I was hoping she wouldn't be here tonight, but she had a birth, so that took precedent just a little bit, right? So thank you for all that you do, according to you, behind the scenes, to just to make this happen, and everyone. So lovely young lady, you are the most recent birthing person. So what was that like for you, going through it? You said a wonderful experience, but what was that like going through it for the first
Can I
time?
just say Anaya was one of my doulas?
Oh,
Yeah. And she was like, I couldn't, she and the other doula, Chantel, I couldn't have done it without them, and obviously the support of my husband. But it was
yes.
yeah, I was not prepared for it. Like, it was just, what was your question? Oh,
Being from and
gotcha.
experiencing that, and going to the different appointments and things like that. Was it a pleasant experience and a good experience?
Yeah, so I'll answer that, but I wanted to just quickly say something about um Black maternal health, or just the whole experience.
Go.
I feel like it should be a continuum, because from trying to get pregnant to getting pregnant to laboring and delivering to after, the after. Oh gosh, the after. Like, I felt like during my pregnancy, obviously I had a lot of anxiety, like first time mom anxiety, Googling stuff all the time. Like, I'm obsessed. Even now, obsessed with Googling. But I feel like one of the things that's unfortunate with racism, it's you have a burden is placed on you. Then now you have to now worry. It's outside of just worrying about, like, is my baby okay? Now I'm like worrying about, like, oh, am I going to have a negative experience birthing? And I feel like that was something that was always on my mind. And I have friends who've had babies recently. And especially, like, I'm in the field of public health, and one of my friends, also public health, one of the things that we she talk about now is, okay, we know what your experience is going to be, and everything you hear and you know about as a statistic, worried about that. And I feel like that's so unfortunate, because it affects your experience just being pregnant, for one, because now you're paranoid. And it sucks. Like, it sucks that you have to sort of like worry about that. Like, you have to worry. And because of that, like, I was having conversations with my doctor. I'm just like, which was kind of awkward to have, because my doctor is not Black. So I'm just like, oh, well, I don't want anyone to be racist to me, but I couldn't say that in that way.
Yeah.
But I had to call out race, because I'm like, really need to have a conversation with him before I go into labor, because I'm like, I want to know that I'm not going to have a negative experience as a result of my race. And we had a conversation. It was awkward, but we kind of briefly talked about it, where he assured me that, it's St. Vincent, which is where I had my baby, is a good hospital, da da da. But the fact that I even had to think about that, I had to add that to my list of things to worry about, I felt like shouldn't be the case. And even like going into labor, again, extra paranoia of like, I'm like, I don't want to die. Like, I remember telling my doctor, I'm just like, I want to leave this hospital with a healthy baby and a healthy me. What I really meant was, I want to leave this hospital alive. Like, and again, I shouldn't have to think about that, but I sort of had to, right? Fortunately for me, my experience as St. Vincent was amazing. Honestly, like I had a very positive experience. Like, but I came prepared. I had a doula, like I had two doulas. Like I had like my husband was like who's very proactive. Was like I gave him he came ready with like, okay, if anyone says or does anything, if I'm not being listened to, he knows what to he's more assertive than I am. So I'm just like, you step in and you're like, because we came ready just because of like all these things that you expect, but lucky for me, like I said, my experience was great. Like I didn't feel like, I had any negative experience due to my race, you know. But one of the things that I wanted to call out that I felt like we don't talk enough about is the afterwards. It's because I was not, and I thought because of what I do, I'm like, okay, like I have had friends who've had babies. I kind of know what to expect postpartum, but I was not ready. Like I don't think even now I'm just like, yo, like I had like the way postpartum blues hit me was like it hit me. It really hit me, and like in the first couple of weeks, like I was like fine, exhausted, but after like the first couple of weeks, I was just like found myself in a funk that I could not cry very often. Like it was very hard, and I feel like outside of the support of like my family and my friends, I felt like there was no support from like the healthcare system. Like when you're pregnant, you have certain amount of times you have to see your OB, things like that. And then during the labor and delivery again was great. And then you give birth and it was like, okay, you have a 6 months follow up. I mean 6 weeks follow up.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. Like I remember and like I had to see my doctor like I think 2 or 3 weeks postpartum because I had a lot of inflammation in my breast. I came in, they gave me the typical form that you fill out to assess for postpartum depression. And the first time I filled it out, it was fine. But by the second time I filled it out, as I'm filling this out, I'm like, oh, I don't think I have postpartum depression, but I'm like, I feel like I'm on my way to there. Like I feel like I was like in the middle. But I filled it out. What happens to the forms? I have no idea because like it's not like anyone
Nobody
called
followed
me.
up.
I'm like, because I'm like, do I have to actually get to postpartum depression before like someone reaches out or it also feels like the burden is on you to like, nah, I got to go find a therapist, which I don't even want. That's way too much work. That's like a lot of work to put on a mom to go figure out like how to get help. But the level of care that I received when I was pregnant and when I delivered, I felt like afterwards was like,
You had the baby, you're done.
I had
Your
the
purpose was
baby.
done.
I come in 6 weeks later, doctor checks, oh, okay, you're cleared, you're good. And I'm just like, oh, okay, I guess like,
Yeah.
and that's where I feel like enough attention is not being put at, because I found myself, and I still do, like just Googling a lot of like the things I was experiencing, like, is this normal? Like, cause I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, should I still be experiencing this? Like, should I still be feeling what I'm feeling? I'm like, online it says postpartum blues only last like a couple of weeks. I'm like, it's month 2. Why am I still why am I still crying? Like, but I mean, luckily now I'm like way better. I'm in a way better place.
Yeah.
But still, like I just feel like the healthcare side, there is very little support for moms afterwards. And I don't know, like
Did someone ask you like during your visits how you were feeling emotionally besides the form? Like did someone like ask you?
I mean, like when the doctor walks in, how are you? Like, what am I gonna like?
Right.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
what's the response
Actually,
after that? It's
my
like,
first appointment, I didn't even mean to, but which is I cried because I'm like, oh, my breastfeeding is so hard, it's so painful. It was just like there. I mean, I know he felt sorry for me, but it was just like, oh, see a lactation consultant, okay, like
yeah. See, here's where I get like, I'm like, I just don't want to do this. I don't want that. Like you were mentioning about being prepared, right? But when you were saying about how you were preparing for your child's birth, it sounded like you were preparing for war, right? It's like, all right, we gotta get everybody together. We're ready to fight. Like, what kind of state does that put you in?
Yeah.
What kind of state does that put you in? And I said, listen, I had 2 pregnancies. One was horrible, okay, horrible, and the other was I was ready for the horror,
Yeah.
and it was fine. And I worked until 2 days before I had him, and I was so upset. I was so upset because I was ready. I was like, okay, I know how the disability paperwork works. I know what bed rest is, all of that. But one of the things that, like, as I've processed, like, after that and supporting girlfriends and, like, what I had, I've come to this realization, and I said, you know what? People will say, as Black women, like, what should we do? How can we approach this? Well, knowing what we know and knowing what the statistics are. And I say, yes, prepare, but prepare in saying, who do I need? And what do I need in order to revel in this experience? Because growing your family or creating the family that you desire should be full of joy.
Yeah.
It should be full of introspection, kind of thinking about the future, all of the ideas. I mean, my husband probably, he thought about having a baby like when we got pregnant. I thought about this since I was like 2 years old, And for so many women, that's what it is. Like you imagine this,
Yeah.
you kind of play it out in your mind, and then you have this experience where you're pregnant and you can feel these changes, and we should be able to enjoy those things.
Yeah.
And you don't know, is it even going to happen again? Right? Because we delay our childbearing until later, and they're there. So I think about preparing, and like one's like preparing your mind too, is like looking at the practicality of, for everybody, it makes you look at your relationship different. 1 minute it was all good, and now you're like, he ain't no good. It was like, but is he going to be a good father? It's like, you should have thought about that before, honey. Right? But it makes us, you have the reflection on our relationship, even your job. You're like, okay, what's this maternity policy? Finding that person who had a baby so you can know all the ins and outs, and when am I going to be out? How much am I going to get paid? How do I need to do? Because again, like we said, we rank in low on the list. No paid maternity leave in this country. Like, so we just want to have school shooters and serial killers and all of the things because we don't want parents to actually raise their children, right? That's how we're set up by not having, paid maternity leave. But I digress. So anywho, like thinking about, it's like what supports do we need? Like we all have somebody in our lives who like hype us up so great. And then we have people who are like, they add to our worry. I say protect your neck. Listen, if you have somebody who's adding to your worry, that might just be the time they're gonna be on a 9-month pause. It's like I can't talk to you right now. We start getting into or telling me or sending me fight videos or shooting nothing, no. If it means shutting off social media, if it means like, just the things that we need to have to be in a headspace and in a heart space of what is happening right now, what is happening in your body, in your life, in your family, as opposed to all of the other things. Because we can't control so much. So it's like focusing on the things that we can control, and it's like who you're talking to and who you're spending time with and how prepared you are. But I think it can be so overwhelming and so challenging. And then assembling your squad. So whether it's a doula, making sure that your doctor, like you have your questions answered, and I think it's fine. You go to your visit and you're like, listen, so I read this article. Sir, ma'am, you see this? Black women, they dying. I don't want that to be us. What we gonna do? I mean, and like, what is the plan?
Yeah.
And and it's great. Oh, we have a wonderful hospital. Guess what? This happens at top hospitals. It's not about that. And so just, I think that's kind of like an approach in my mind. And it's also the approach that I took. Like I was an OBGYN. I thought I was for sure gonna die. I was like, oh gosh. Lord, if we survive this pregnancy, and once I got happy about it, like, okay, we're okay. I'm starting to show. Then I had like pregnancy complications and ended up on 5 months of bed rest. I was like, but even then it was, assembling the team and who did I need, and whether it's your mom or some of us, like our parents die so young, and that again, that's because of racism. The work that our parents are doing and how they are aging and weathering and wearing out. So our kids are growing up without grandparents. Those kinds of things. So if you don't have your parents anymore, your parents are in a place to be able to really support you in your pregnancy. Who is that person? The nice lady from next door. The people are nice to pregnant people, and I don't take that niceness like so lightly, or where we feel like we have to have the Black Superwoman syndrome and have on our cape. No, nope. I'm fragile as eggs.
Yeah.
Please, please, and thank you.
Gentle air.
Exactly. Exactly. And then again, like even after that delivery of like, who are the people, and like finding your mom squad and finding all of the fun things that are for this time in life. For all those, the free Barnes and Nobles, Home Depot, first Saturday of the month, they got a thing for like when your kid's like two to, yeah, the crafts and getting the little hammers, little 2-pound hammers. Great. It's great.
Yeah, I take it back to all of Barnes and Noble. My daughter cried when the ended. I think when she hit 13, because they used to give them a birthday cupcake every year, and they gave her like at 13, they give you like 15% off on a book. She was so upset. Now that she doesn't like reading, but she loved her birthday cupcake.
Wait, Barnes and Noble gives out free cupcakes for kids'
Yes,
birthdays?
it's called a kids club.
Okay,
Yeah,
did
my
not
kid,
know that.
like on their birthday, like it comes like happy birthday, birthday, whatever the child's name is, and you get a cupcake and you go. It's from Starbucks. It's lovely. They loved it, but it's
Okay.
stuffed. So
Oh, it's stopped? What? I have to sign up for that. Oh.
she's absolutely right. I'm sorry you had that experience. It's funny when I was doing, reading up about, Black Maternal Health Week and all that. It said that it continued, like the pregnancy related complications continued to a year after birth,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, I didn't realize that it continued. But you're right. It's like after you've had the baby, it's like okay, you're done. Like you've done your work. You've been the carrier. I've experienced that. I remember. I lost my job and anyway, laid off. So I guess lost my job and stopped working. I remember going to this place that was designed to help you with your mortgage because that was my fear. I was very, very pregnant. I was still in Tufune and nobody was hiring me. I was like 7 months pregnant or something like that. I mean, I couldn't hide it no matter how many coats I put on. It was quite obvious. And I remember going to this place that was said to help you with your mortgage. And I said, that was my major concern. And they said to me, like, you have to lose your house first for them to give me money to help me with my mortgage. And I always thought that was the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life. And I said, so here I am coming to you to tell you that I'm concerned about losing my house. So, you said you offer help with mortgage. No, they offer help with first and last rent. I said, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And then
So,
just the amount of worry
yeah.
that is, like all of those things, and
Yeah.
and it just goes back again because I could tie anything to racism, right? It's like, okay, well, what is the interest rate that you're offered, right? Because and even so, interest rate that you're offered on the house and like what
Yeah.
is being lent to, it's just it gets to be annoying.
It does.
But I think recognizing it and seeing when it's at play is so important because there's so many times that we will put the blame on ourselves and say like I've come up short in some kind of way, and it's like nope, racism strikes again. And I think, and it's not to not take responsibility, but too often we're taking responsibility for things that are not ours.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it happens to all of us, right? I mean, we are underpaid. I mean, this is not me saying it. Like we're underpaid compared to, white male. It was like 64%, or did we jump to 72%? Are we still at 64 cents
I think
to the dollar? I think we're still at, so, things like that. Those are things that are true. And I mean, when we go to the store, they don't charge us less for stuff because, well, you're being paid less, so let me charge you less for stuff. We have the same things that we have to pay the same amount of money for homes. We have, well, a little higher, but again, that's racism. We have the same challenges and issues. So, what do we do? So, what advice could you offer to her? I mean, Dr. Hamlin said a few things, what support is there for the mothers after giving birth and how they can feel like they're still being supported because postpartum depression is unfortunately not something that I'm from the Caribbean, that was not something that was mentioned, and it's not something that is attributed to Black women because we are the as Black folks, again, racism, right? Like we don't feel pain or, something like that. So we are never the ones that are always looked at to be the ones that are suffering or even suffering from postpartum depression. I think now we can have that conversation, but what tools and resources are there for her and others like her?
Well, one thing I would say is stigma reduction is huge because, we in the Black community are still to be able to have honest conversations and recognize that this is okay to talk about because I think there's still a lot of stigma and it's also cultural and it's definitely contextualized, but I think what's most important is making sure that there's support, and that support can come in many ways. It can come as within your own family, within also the larger community. And I think that's what Dr. Hamlin is seeking to do with the doula program, and that we can be able to provide that long-term support through that postpartum period, right? And I know with Dr. Hamlin, what she's done with her work in Lancaster, with the Diversifying Doulas Initiative, she had like mental health first aid that the doulas were trained in, and to be able to keep an eye on when they're engaging with the moms postpartum, that they're able to recognize and screen and be able to provide support, and knowing where the resources are in the community, and resources that are culturally appropriate, culturally informed, that honor and center our lived experience, right?
Yeah.
And I think I know at UMass Memorial, that's the champion of our department chair, Dr. Tiffany Moore Simon, and she's deeply committed to perinatal mental health, and is nationally recognized for efforts such as McPack for Moms, which is a strategy that helps provide support for birthing people and women postpartum, as well as arming providers with the tools to be able to refer and get the support when moms are in crisis. So I feel as though it's multi-pronged, and there might be ways that we need to now lean into that, to how do we support Black birthing individuals throughout that postpartum period. And I think that's what the doula program will seek to close a lot of those gaps, in terms of how do we enhance and add value and amplify the kind of resources that are tailored to support Black birthing individuals through the postpartum period.
And you're not, and also I feel like knowing that you're not alone, that you're not the only person that is going through this and that has gone through it. So like having those support groups. So one thing we're looking to do is having a breastfeeding support group and a childbirth education support group, just to have moms who are pregnant or who have already given birth be in the same space with each other, and just just talk about things and whatever it is that may come up, just to have that safe space to do so.
And I actually feel like I'm very lucky in that I have a great husband. I have family members that are very supportive. I have amazing friends who are like, reaching out, connecting. I think but there's only so when you're struggling, or when you're going through, when you don't know what the heck is going on with you emotionally, then like, why am I crying? Like, you don't even know. There's only so much that your family members can do or say to you that can maybe help. But I think, like I mentioned before, one of the things that I struggle with, that I feel like shouldn't be, is if you give me a list of resources, now I have to go reach out. Like, I'm like, more than likely at that point, I think it's now that I could probably reach out for stuff. Like, I actually want to get engaged in, like, meeting new moms and stuff like that. But it's because I'm in the space where I can actually do that. Before, I'm not picking up, calling numbers and saying, hey, because
Right.
that just seems like a burden.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I feel like I feel sad for. Like, when I became a mom, I started thinking a lot about, I'm like, what do single mothers do? Because I'm like, I don't know how, because I'm like, I have a husband who's very involved, but even with that, it's still hard.
Right.
And I'm like, what do single mothers do? What do people who don't have family members who are close, what do they do? What do people that don't have friends, what do they do? Because, again, putting the burden on the person who needs to just reach out, be the ones to do something. Like, I need to like look this up, and I'm very curious. It's like, when you fill out the form in your OB's office, what happens to that? Where does it go?
And
Like,
every office
like,
is
do they
different.
reach out? Do they just reach out and say, "Oh, well, find a therapist"? Like, that's what I think happens. I don't know. I'm like, do they help you? Because, again, you can't tell someone to go. Like, they're not going to do that in that space. Someone has to help do that for you. It's because you're in a you're I felt like I went through, like, my mind was like, it was a lot of fog. Like, I was sleep deprived. Being sleep deprived makes you like, just, so again, like, I'm like, what kind of support is available that doesn't involve you actively sort of like searching and reaching out for it? Just like how when you're pregnant, you have those already scheduled visit. All you have to do is, like, you go into one appointment. They're like, oh, your next appointment's in 2 weeks. Can you do this? Yeah, it's cool. I don't have to do anything. I just show up, and it's like,
Yeah.
Because you're already doing a lot.
yeah.
It's interesting because every office is different, and something should happen with the form, right? And so typically you have over this score, you're going to come back and talk about it. But what you described is really something falling through the cracks, and even for example, family medicine. When family medicine is taking care of a patient for their pregnancy, you bring back the patient and the baby as a dyad.
Mm-hmm.
So already you're having more visits because you think about if you have a pediatrician, you're going there and you're going there with the baby and you're going somewhere else. And in family medicine, they're together. So now you have more points of contact.
Mm-hmm.
And so every office is different. Then simply, yes, you do fall off of a cliff essentially after week by week by week, you're here. And then it's like, I'll see you in 2 months.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Right. And so sometimes what happens is, especially if you have a great relationship with your doctor, it's like, I'll be back next week. Because, for example, we do that for patients for blood pressure check,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so what? And at the end of the day, you know what? You're the client or you're the patient or you're the consumer. You're paying the same thing for the whole coverage of your pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something else I think, where it can just be that you're having another touch point with your same doctor that you've been seeing, who knows you well, who maybe saw you when you were, before you got married, when you got married, now when you're having a baby and can being with you then. Some offices will have mental health support in the office, and others it's like, here's a information sheet. And so I think even those things of kind of proactive, like how can you ask, like, what's available in this office? What tools do you have, or what additional services? Because like you said, that point of here, go and find somebody, and how you're going to build a relationship at that point.
Yeah.
And that point of the way that our system, the healthcare system is set up, it really is reactionary to crisis. So if you were to say, I don't want to be here anymore, right? Then you would have been back in the hospital.
Right. Yep.
And someone was sitting in the room with you until they can't. And it's like, it shouldn't have to be that severe to get support.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited, as Dr. Krista mentioned, what you're going to be doing with the doula program and, building that support and doing what you did in Philadelphia, bringing it right here to Worcester. I think that would be amazing. And just, I've just shot this out. I do have two fabulous friends that one of them is in the audience right now. They do a postpartum support group. Carla Davila de la Cruz, or de la Cruz Davila, and Yolanda Ramos-Guzman. They have this postpartum support group that I can connect you with her, and just for anybody who's listening, just to make sure that we've got to support our mamas.
Yes. I want to just plug a couple other things. When you for postpartum and like, okay, you have this baby, now what? Find all the free things.
Yeah.
These little children, these little crumb snatchers, they will take all of our money. And so it's very good to find all the free things. I'm super cheap and I love to spend money, right? So it balance things.
Yeah.
Literally the library. Okay. The library is like your free preschool.
Yeah.
Right. And you've paid for it already. And I think a lot of us, if you came up and where Amazon is big, you're used to just buying a book and it shows up at your doorstep. Guess what? The library, you paid your taxes. So all those books, they're yours.
Yeah.
Right. And so the most libraries will have like a children's program. And so they're reading to kids. So the children's story time. And I say, don't just choose one, be a frequent flyer and get out, because they all have different schedules. So you could literally be at a library story time, a Barnes and Noble story time. Barnes and Noble story time is Wednesdays and Saturdays.
Do they still have that? They stopped.
It's good. Love it. You can color and
Yes. Yes. So the library story time is Home Depot the first Saturday of the month, and there's different things for different ages. Music together. It's like a mommy and me or baby and me music class, and it's a franchise, so they have them all over. You can just Google it, or they have some kinder music. But I like music together. Like, when we wake up in the morning, we say, "Good morning."
Yeah.
So many things, and I think a lot of times, like you get home and you have your baby, and you're like, I'm so happy that you're here. But then you think you're just supposed to wait for them to like start to interact with you.
Yeah.
And if they're learning all now, their supercomputers is like, read to your child, sing out loud, talk to them and tell them what's going on. You're changing the diaper, talk about your body. Look at your toes, these magical toes. Oh my goodness, these feet are made for running. Look at you. Oh my goodness. And these feet. I mean, whatever the things are, but it's amazing how you get into these routines and then you just see something go off and you're like, when did they learn how to do that?
Yeah.
Like when they anticipate something that you've done all the time and you're like, how did you know that this is coming next? And it's beautiful. and it happens right when you got to go back to work.
I did it because I was pregnant. I mean, I knew I was going back to work, but like literally thought it was like gonna be magical. Like maybe I thought I was gonna strap the baby on and bring the baby to work until like before I went back to work, I was like, wait, I don't bring the baby. Devastated, but
Yeah.
we're mamas. That's the things that we do. But ladies, thank you so much. I know that I've enjoyed our conversation so much. I did promise the audience that they'll have audience participation. So I have one question from the audience, and then we're gonna come back and kind of wrap up. And so let's think about what y'all gonna say. How you gonna end this? All right. So question from the audience, Miss Carla, Miss Carla.
To mothers have their children. And I know as doula services. I know for like us, like as a nonprofit organization, we offer like what she mentioned, a postpartum mom-to-mom support group, and we also are doing like grief support groups and things like that. And it's BIPOC, all women BIPOC that are doing it. I guess my question is, how do organizations like mine get into like your system so that way it's out there and more women know about it? Because one of the struggles we're facing is that we're offering all these services, but then nobody's showing up. So then it's like, so is it a need? Is it that we're not having the right reaches out there? Do we need to talk to doctors and doulas, and who do we need to talk to? So that way, not only do mothers feel more support, not only within the health system, but also with mental health, because that's what we do. We do mental health, we do, like my background, I'm a social worker. So like, how do we get our services out there because they are free, and we want to be able to help as our communities.
You're looking at me. So I think partnership is, obviously we're a new program, but partnering and seeing what's out there. Every wheel doesn't need to be reinvented, right? And so being able to know what the community resources are, absolutely. So for anybody listening, and you have an organization, something that you want to connect with the doula program at UMass Memorial, you can email doula@umassmemorial.org, and then we'll be connected that way. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for the question. I'm sure by the time you leave here, she'll send you an email. She's on top of it. She does work for UMass Jan, but she owns a wonderful nonprofit called the Wellstone Inc. that deals with food insecurity and things like that for the community. So she does a lot for the mothers and things in the community. So even if it's not for you, if you know someone, mention it to them, because again, as she mentioned, it is free and like there's all these resources. So if you have been tuning in, we've been chatting with so many phenomenal women on this panel today. We're talking about Black maternal health, and of course, then that leads to different conversation in Delta, talking about racism and structural systemic racism that's been in place. But we are not victims. We are not the things that happen to us. We are greater than that, but we do have to address it. So it's going to take more than us, institutions. We do need to start holding their feet to the fire and having these conversations. I mean, how can we address it? It's a fact. It is happening. Dr. Johnson was telling me a very interesting fact about you being an OBGYN. You're at the 0.8 percentile in the United States.
And full professors of OBGYN, like meaning at the stage of your career, we're so woefully underrepresented that it's almost non-existent, which is so sad.
It is.
And it really will take a multi-pronged effort to really be intentional about not just focusing on getting students of color in. That's important, but we need to be the mentors, right? We need to be the faces that will support these students, not just when they get accepted, but their journey through their career is lined with exposures that may not often be positive. As all of us, we could each write a 1,000-page book on our journey and the microaggressions and macroaggressions that we have overcome and withstood. And so we need to be intentional about making sure that there are more of us leading in these spaces and being in these spaces, and that positionality and that representation in our health systems is absolutely crucial, not only to support our patients of color,
Mhm.
but also our learners and our peers and our faculty and staff. And that is so crucial. And it really requires intentionality to lean into to not only, you know, make sure that we are visibly present and represented in our institution. And that is what will bring in more students of color because they'll say, I'm not alone, that I have people who will look out for me and support me on that journey. And as in so doing, we'll improve the care of the patients in our community that we serve who look like us.
Absolutely. We need sustainable things in place, right? It's not enough that, like, we throw the big party, but how do you support me after the party, right? So we need sustainable system that is going to support you through the entire journey because we didn't even get to touch on the challenges you guys face in med school. You mentioned microaggression, the braids, the colors, the volume of your voice and things like that. And that is something that we can all write books about. So we haven't even touched on that. That's a different story for a different day, because that is a whole lot and maybe a cup of tea. But anyway, so no, thank you all for coming. So I'm going to have each of these brilliant Black doctors and individuals, just end with, Black Maternal Health Week, what it means to them, and just, anything, however they want to end. So I can end with you since I started with you. So do you want to go? All right.
Yeah.
I'll go with Dr. Krista.
Okay. Well, for me, one thing that I wanted to convey is that what we're doing is legacy building. I say this a lot because I think of my two daughters. I have a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old, right? And they're looking up to me. I want what the work that I'm doing is beyond my lifetime. It's intergenerational work. And I am here because I'm standing on the shoulders of a legacy of giants who've come before me and paved the way. And so it's for me to be able to lift as I climb and bring as many people along in this journey, but also be able to pass the baton to that next generation. And I want to do the kind of work that will build a legacy that my daughters coming up will not see any restriction on what they can achieve. That when they are at the stage to be able to become moms themselves, they're going to have positive birth experiences and that they will have every opportunity to have the best care, but also the best outcome of their delivery, and that they can have no limits on what they can achieve. Right. And that they will not face the same macroaggressions that I have endured, that my parents have endured, that we have endured because of that generational trauma of who we are as a people. And so this work I know is bigger than me, right? And I have a humble appreciation and recognition that I cannot do this alone. And that's why I have sought to, surround myself with people who are amazing and so talented and have gifts that I don't have, but I see as so necessary to move this forward. And that we cannot do it alone, but we need to be able to do this, together with all of us in the resonance, lockstep, to apply those pressure points to then move that mountain, and has to be multi-pronged and multi-directional and to really achieve the goals that we want, which is improving care, improving outcomes, improving representation in how we can advance not just Black maternal health and maternal health equity, but health equity for all, communities of color. And it's something that I feel I am walking into my purpose doing this work. And I just have a humble appreciation and recognition that, this work is much bigger. And if I can just play a small role for future generations, then I would have done my part.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Miss Jacqueline.
I would just add more like a wishful, like what I wish to see, like what I wish to see in the future. I hope that we can get to a place where a healthy mom, healthy baby is not something that you have to fight so hard to get. I hope and I wish that it becomes part of like just a general norm of like doing business where if you're about to have a baby, you're not coming armed with like everything you think you need to be. It's just there. It's part of how business runs as usual. Like I hope for a time where it's like the pressure on Black women or birthing people in general is not on you to make sure that you have a positive experience. It should just be, this is how it runs. Because I feel like there's a whole group of people who are not actively thinking about this as much as some people are, because the system just works a little bit better for them.
Mm.
And that's really what I think about that. I'm like, I think about when my daughter is older and should she choose to want to have like kids, I want her experience to be different, like from beginning to end, to just be completely different. And I hope society then, again, I don't know, part of me feels jaded. I'm just like, I don't know if that'll happen, but but I really desperately want that. I want people to just experience, you know, health and joy and experience all these things without feeling like they have to fight for it. Because some people are just, we're not built for fighting. We're just tired of fighting. Like, so I hope all the fight, everything happening right now that all you guys are doing, I hope it translates to something meaningful in the future where it's just easier, you know.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
And I just want to add for people to just know that it's okay to advocate for themselves. Because when you go into a hospital system or your doctor's office, there's like this, you, you feel like this, oh, this person is on the nerve, like pedestal, they're powerful, they know all. But no, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to use it's a acronym called BRAIN. So you ask, what are the benefits of what you're offering? What are the risks? Are there any alternatives? What is my intuition telling me? And what happens if we do nothing about this? So like just being more interactive and involved in your care and knowing like that it's okay to advocate for yourself. And it's something that you should absolutely do it. Karen doesn't just do that. Like you could do that yourself as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I am um I'm just happy to be here, and I think that, Black Maternal Health Week, the fact that we have to put our focus on it tells us where we are. Um, and I think that the framing of this in an asset framing of we have what we need, and the things that we don't have, they're out there and we can get them. And so like kind of reclaiming the experience into one that is like kind of uh, nestled in community, and really like bringing life into the world is a beautiful and wonderful and kind of earth shifting experience. And it should be earth shifting, not earth shattering. And so I'm fully embracing that, and I want to just be a part of making that the norm, like you said.
All right. So thank you to Dr. Johnson Egbagu, Jacqueline Efreni, Anaya Sanders, and Dr. Shirley Hamlin. Thank you all so much for being on the show. I truly appreciate all your insight and just everything. I learned a couple of things, which I'm always grateful for, because I think that every day we should learn. So thank you all for being on the show. And for those of you who tuned in, I really want to thank these phenomenal ladies for sharing their expertise, their lived experience, their insight, their every part of them that they've allowed to, me to broadcast to the world out there, because it's worldwide, it's on YouTube, so it's all over the world. So FYI, I think it's so important that we have these conversations, these critical conversations. One of the greatest sayings actually came from a movie that I saw, and they were talking about faith. And I remember the young man said he didn't believe in God, and this was an angel, and she said, just because God doesn't cease to exist because you refuse to believe. And I've used that saying over and over, and I've applied it so much to my life, and I apply it to the same with racism and disparities within, the Black maternal health. Just because you refuse to believe that things does not cease to exist. These are things that are happening. We have to address it. We can't just do it on our own, though. So yes, these lovely ladies, they're doing things. They're speaking up. They're advocating. They're creating policies. They're creating safe spaces. But we need more people in power, more people, more institutions, health departments, government policies, senators, city councilors, whoever needs to get involved to make sure that we address these inequities that is happening right in here in our community. And then we can America should not be like this. We should not be one of the quote unquote richest countries and have one of the highest mortality, pregnancy death related incidents, especially for a Black woman. So I thank you all for tuning in. I truly appreciate you. Make sure that you are checked into UMass to find out about their Black Maternal Health Week, which is starting tomorrow, the 11th through the 17th. So many great things that are happening. Make sure you're checking out the community baby shower resources. Networking and communications are key for us to survive this life. So make sure you're connected to all of them. And as always, this is Positively Suzanne saying, I'm so humbled and grateful that anything that I do is an opportunity to give back to you. So thank you. And thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.